Welcome to this week's review of Mashle Magic and Muscle, Chapter 65, Mash Bernadette and Running in the Rain. The chapter starting off with Yo and Neri flying on their respective brooms, presumable towards where Innocent Zero are in the middle of their attack. And I like the subtle way that a difference in status is shown between these two with the broom they are riding, Yo's being larger and more pointlessly ornate while Neri rides on what looks like just a regular broom. I really appreciate organic storytelling, which you might miss just reading the story once or that some people might never notice. Anyway, Neri happens to question Yo on what the actual relationship between Innocent Zero and Wahlberg actually is, something we fans have probably been wondering about for a while. And Yo explains it to us by giving out some delicious lore on the world, explaining that the society which they live in was built by one great magic user, a person who became the architect of what would eventually become the divine visionaries, wielding power said to be divine. Presumable this isn't the same kind of divine power which dwells within a person's wand, or his awakening was something truly more terrifying than even Wahlberg or Innocent Zero. This man's name was Adam, and according to Yo, no one in his lifetime could stand up against his dark magic. It should be noted that in the context of Mashle, darkness, dark and other similar things do not have the same negative connection they do in a lot of other fictional works, so the fact that Adam used darkness magic should not hold bearing on if he was a moral person or not. But given how his society seems to promote the execution of children, or at least the removal of non-magic people from the gene pool, I am leaning on him, having some rather extreme views if we ever get any sort of background on him. And we get a silhouette of him and his wand. I'm not certain of what to make of it. It looks like it has bones growing out of it and perhaps a blade coming out one side of it, sort of resembling a scythe, so maybe he wielded some kind of death magic. That would certainly make him something to be feared, someone wielding a power over death and potentially life, that would be enough to make anyone seem divine. Then Yo drops the bombshell. Wahlberg and Innocent Zero were Adam's strongest students. Noted that he doesn't say only students, just the strongest, and it is also interesting that he says Innocent Zero. I would think that Father had a name before he became well known as Father or Innocent Zero. Does that mean his actual name is somehow hidden in some way, or is this some kind of Voldemort situation where the name is just taboo, or maybe his name really is just Innocent Zero, which would be a little odd. But anyway, Neri, having a freak out usually reserved for Finn, questions if that means they are almost equal in power, something which Yo confirms, but he also mentions that if they are attacking knowing that, then they must have a trump card up their sleeve. And then with a grave expression he thinks on what will happen if Wahlberg loses this battle. We are not given access to those thoughts as we are moved away from that scene to where we left Innocent Zero and Wahlberg. But I could hazard a guess at what he believes will happen should Wahlberg actually die. And so back with the two most powerful men shown in the series thus far, we get an unexpected reveal with Father pulling back his hood, while questioning Wahlberg on if he is as happy to see him, as he is to see Wahlberg. What we get is an image that looks like it could be straight out of some kind of more horror-based series, with Innocent Zero's featureless head resembling that of the Slender Man. Well, there goes any ideas I had on what I thought was up with him. He is just a complete monster. Even Wahlberg is taken aback by the display, which means thankfully this is not just how he originally looked in the past, but that does bring up other questions, like how did he do this to himself, if he did indeed do this to himself? And why would he? Either way, Innocent Zero speaks to Wahlberg, in what I assume would be either a mocking or fake hurt tone, saying how it's not nice to look at an old friend as if they are a monster. Then his entire head begins to break down into cubes and rearrange themselves, while questioning the old man if he would still call him a friend if he looked like this, and as he asks that, he turns into a youthful-looking man with two bleeding lines coming down from their right eye and a marking that resemble two hands of a clock coming from the left eye. And whomever this is, be it the original form of Innocent Zero or the face of someone else that he is just mimicking, it is enough to suitably alarm the headmaster, who considers him to have abandoned his humanity. But Innocent Zero disagrees, claiming himself to be more human than anyone, having very human desires. There is no limit to his greed, and today he will take Mash back, but more importantly right now he intends to kill Wahlberg. This is something I have seen before, someone claiming that against what others might say they maintain their humanity by giving themselves over to the worst parts of it, greed being a common one. It does bring up the question, what is the measure of a human? Is it the flesh, the mind, the desires which we all have outside of our natural needs to survive, or is it something more spiritual in nature? I do not know, but Innocent Zero certainly seems to believe he has his own answer. And after he gives that declaration, he casts a spell called Times the Living Dead, which results in the summoning of a chained-up black coffin, surrounded by twisted, hole-filled wings on either side of it and a large spectral black cloak floating above it. It is overall a rather creepy-looking display, and as he looks on, Wahlberg can only think in utter shock that the spell is forbidden. That is unfortunately all we get to see of that fight, as we now move back to where Mash and Cell War are talking, with the latter still dumbfounded by the fact Mash actually does not remember him. But Mash on the other hand, can only see him as a man with the head of a cream puff. I guess he is suffering from withdrawals if he is unable to focus on all. Interesting little quirk about his character. Cell War does not take too kindly to being ignored, ending up trying to strike Mash down with a giant spike which he thankfully dodges. Cell War cannot help but smile while commenting that Mash remembers that at least. Cell War, most likely to get under Mash's skin, speaks about how he remembers his friend survived, so after he is done with Mash, he will go finish the job. Mash however does not seem the least bit concerned by this and instead looks back at him with a serious expression. Cell War does not take this well, asking Mash if he wants to get impaled like his friend, to which we see a memory of Evil Eye getting impaled by one of Cell War's spikes. Aiming to end their fight right away, Cell War sets off attacks on all sides to strike out at Mash. We then get a short little diversion over to where Dot, returned to normal, is fighting against those monsters while worrying about Mash as he is surrounded by carbon spears, remembering how he got close using Abel's doll, but now he is on his own. But as we transition back to them, we get to see the utterly stunned and perhaps horrified face of Cell War as he watches Mash, his entire body starting to quiver slightly. Mash, proving once again why you shouldn't ever doubt him, is somehow running over the top of Cell War's attack without any issue right up until he gets in the man's face, smacking him square across the face and send him to the ground with a thud. Notable Mash's expression isn't his serious one, so I doubt that attack had all the strength Mash could muster behind it, more just a casual smack, which from Mash would usually be enough to knock out any enemy, but Cell War is surprisingly durable from what we have seen of him. Touching his cheek where he was struck, notable not cracking, he can't help but question how Mash, who was only just able to avoid his attack last time, was now capable of completely overwhelming him. And sure enough, now Mash remembers him, calling him the Thorny One, but as he dusts himself down and looks down at Cell War, he can't help but indirectly insult Cell War, saying how he has already seen his trick before, so it's been played out. This leaves the final scene of the chapter, yet again with Cell War looking utterly shocked by Mash. At this point it's becoming a running gag, and I can't say I don't enjoy watching Cell War continuously have his ego damaged by Mash on accident. Overall, this chapter expanded the world, made us aware of how much of a monster Innocent Zero is, and gave us some much needed background on Wahlberg and the fight between Mash and Cell War is about to begin. So, I would say this was a fairly good chapter and I'm looking forwards to the future, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. I have been the Anonymous Weeb, and if you genuinely enjoyed this, maybe consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing if you want to hear me talk more about Mashle.